Excited to dive work-life balance. As an entrepreneur, this is a very controversial topic. Even if you're a professional executive, there's always so many things we can do in life and at workplace. And today I'm here with Corey, and over the next 45 minutes, we want to dive deep into how you can have a better health, more time with your family, and how you can create a workspace, but also a life where you have both of these worlds in a way that helps you to sustain it on the long term. So it's really the happiness, longevity, the performance around that. And Corey has a very strong background in leadership as well, and he helps a lot of professionals, entrepreneurs, how they can balance these two elements better. So we want to hear about different perspectives on that. And Corey, could you tell us a little bit about what you do, what your background is?
Yeah, so my background is I've owned several businesses for quite some time, and now I'm a faith-based leadership coach while I still own those other businesses. But I feel this is having such a bigger impact on people, and because of my experiences and extensive experience in marketing, along with entrepreneurship, that I feel I can help people in many different ways. So I'm a leadership and coach and mentor, and I basically work with entrepreneurs and executives who many times they get overwhelmed with their life and it just becomes this boring day-to-day thing where they're not really accomplishing anything. It's bland and they really don't have motivation to really go into work or to perform because it's just this same thing like being on a treadmill over and over and over, no really purpose. So I help people to restore their purpose and their passion and what's most important to them and their priorities.
Yes. No, that's fantastic. I think it's so important because a lot of the people, as you mentioned, they just go to their work like a zombie, like, and then they come back and they do the bare
Yeah.
minimum and get not around that. So yeah, we're gonna dive deeper into this topic. But first of all, follow me and Corey for more tips on personal branding, on how you can restore your purpose. Corey has amazing content and a lot of things you have to share as well. And I share a lot of tips on personal branding. And if you're ready to dive into this topic, drop a ready in the comments and let's make it to an awesome year. So, the first thing, Corey, I'm curious to know, like, what do you think is the biggest challenge that most entrepreneurs and professionals face when it comes to this work-life balance? Everyone has a very different definition of that. Some people believe in that, and other people think this is all BS. Like, what is your experience around that?
Yeah, I think it's really different for everybody, but one of the biggest things I can see is that once people get into the workforce, they kind of lose themselves instead of them having their own centered passion and purpose and what they're trying to pursue. Many times it becomes the work or the career that ends up driving everything they do. And before you know it, it's the career or business driving your purpose and passion rather than you driving it. And then when you do that, you end up becoming disconnected from what you truly matters for you, what's important. And I see, if you go to the end of the road for many executives and entrepreneurs and people, even if they're not um, own their own business,
Mhm.
but after the end of the career, you end up seeing there's a lot of people who have one or multiple divorces, so
Mhm.
they lose their family, which and I think in most cases is one of the most important things, but we think, "Oh, we'll have time later. We'll have time later." So we tend to put off some of these important things. And then they find out they get to the end of the road or at the end of their career or their business and they realize, "Wow, I've lost a lot along the way and I've never really connected to what was most important to me." And the one thing you can't get back is time. You can make money, different opportunities, you can do a lot of different things, but you just can't get your time back. So I think getting really lost in that rat race has been a huge issue for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really great point. It reminds me on a study that I've read about, and it was about the top three biggest regrets that people have. And according to a study, one of the top regrets was that people didn't spend enough time with their loved ones and family. And then one of the other two was that they live a life that was based on other people's shoulds and not on something that they truly wanted in terms of, what they go for. And I also feel a lot of entrepreneurs, they feel they go with the guilt. So when they're with their family, they have this guilt of not working right now, especially as high performers. And then when they're at work, they're thinking of their families, or they're feeling, oh, I want to do other things. Like, how do you set for yourself such boundaries that it's healthy, that you say this family time or this is more integrated? How do you go about this?
Yeah, and that's actually I've experienced that a lot, and for many years, and didn't realize it,
Mm,
being basically a workaholic and disregarding my family. So I've spent probably the last 5 to 10 years over that period of time just trying to develop connections with my family, being intentional, and really focusing on that, realizing that both my wife and I've been married. I didn't say this, but I've been married 24 years to my wonderful wife, and I have 3 young adult kids who I'm very proud of. However, being married 24 years, I'm also 55 years old at this point, and I'm finding out that we started having some rough situations in our marriage. I'm like, what's going on here? And there was a number of situations, some that I was aware of, but also other things that I wasn't aware of that tend to happen when people are married in their 20 plus years. Once again, things get stagnant, things aren't addressed, people are not connected, they're very disconnected, and they've gone off in 2 different directions very slowly, but over time, and then all of a sudden they hit that time, if they do have kids, that they might be an empty nester um,
mm,
type of situation where the kids are gone. Now it's like, okay, we don't even know each other. Why do we want to spend time? And by that time, they may be completely disconnected, and it may be very difficult to restore that family that they had. But one thing that's very important, I think, is along the way we have to be once again connected to ourself. We have to reconnect with ourself. And I think with the internet, technology, all the different apps and dings and notifications, we become extremely disconnected and what I call superficial or on the surface level,
mm,
meaning we have all these distractions, all these topics, work, crises, baseball events, family events, all different types of things. And we're driven by all these things that are up on the surface rather than going deeper and connecting with ourselves to find out what are we truly passionate about. Because what I found when I was younger, and this may not have been too long ago, but I used to focus on stuff, stuff, stuff. What's most important to Corey? Stuff. Going
mm,
on vacations, having motorcycles because I ride motorcycles, flying airplanes because I fly airplanes for fun. Going on vacation, doing all different types of things, stuff, 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 and just having fun, but not realizing after a while that kind of got boring. It wasn't deep, it
mm,
wasn't purposeful, and didn't have much impact. So over the last several years, I've even been looking like, how do I reconnect with myself? What's important to me? What gives me energy? What gives me motivation to move forward? So, a big piece of that was that I was mainly focusing on myself,
mhm,
not really looking at the big picture. And I was looking at very shallow things. I never took the time to go deep because it takes time. You don't just find the answer. Hey, what's important to me today? And then that answer may actually change over time because what I wanted 10 years ago was not the same thing I want now, or I think it's important. And it's not the same thing 20 years ago that I thought was important either. So things will change. So you need to be flexible, but you also need to take that time to really be reflective and introspective
mm,
about what's important to you at this moment in time. You personally, that's physically. What I call, like, I think it's 6 or 7 F's. You have to think of your family,
mhm,
your faith, your finances, your friends, fun, future, and there might be something else, fitness.
mm,
I don't know if I said that or not, but you have to think of all these different areas of your life, consider them, and you do have enough time to really prioritize the things that are important for you, but you don't have enough time to do everything that's presented to you. So you really have to pick and choose and prioritize what's going to be or have the most impact for you.
Wow, thank you so much for these insights. I think it's really great, and I hope that people make notes out of it. And one of the things that you mentioned is the purpose and our identity that can change in our evolution of it is something I've also been through. And I think that a lot of the things that people also, which is a great mindset shift, is that you're not married to the things that you do. And I also realized that a lot of the things that works, it's always like integrated with different things. Because in the beginning as entrepreneur, I was always thinking like, oh, I want to focus on my career, like no boyfriend, no problem, like let's just go. And I pushed everything away because I was so ambitious, and I still am. And there was one subconscious thought that didn't believe that I can have it all, like this thriving relationship, and then my thriving business, and then this community, and then you feel like, oh, spirituality, and you feel like all over the place. But then it's really like prioritizing, okay, how can I, integrate, for example, the prayers before I start my day, the routine. And then on the weekends, I go out and I talk with my boyfriend, like agenda, like every week, like what's on the plan, how can we support each other. So there's a lot of this
Yep.
sometimes uncomfortable conversations that have to take place behind the scenes. And I really realized that knowing what I want, knowing what's important, at least right now, and then communicating those needs, boundaries to our loved ones, partner, and also to our clients, what our boundaries are, help me a lot in maintaining my standards and also my happiness. Because, like, my mission is really important, makes me happy, but it's also very important that I have family support system and just celebrate life. And I also feel that a lot of entrepreneurs forget why they initially started their business, and they
Mhm.
end up later in this hustle culture and things, and they question themselves, what am I even doing? So for you, you mentioned a lot about connecting back to oneself. Could you tell a little bit people about how people can connect themselves back? Because I think there's a lot of people even in marriages where they feel truly disconnected. Even around a lot of people they feel disconnected. Where does that come from, and how would you help them to connect back to themselves?
Yeah, for me, maybe telling a little bit about me and how I operate is that I've grown up in kind of the marketing and tech industry. However, because I saw just before smartphones, just how all of a sudden the phone is in our life. We used to only have one phone per household. Now we're at one phone for every individual. And that goes all the way down to kids in elementary school. Kids that are less than 10 years old have cell phones, many of them. So with that, there's going to be a lot of distractions, and it's hard to have that phone attached to you and be present and be inward and go deep as to what's important to you. Once again, you're going to have a lot of distractions, a lot of dings. And when you have that, it takes you away, and you all of a sudden start prioritizing this phone runs my life, this mobile device runs my life, I feel, or the Apple Watch in many cases. Uh, Depending on the person, might even be worse. Sure, there are apps and tools that are helpful on all of these things, but if we don't pay attention to what's going on and reconnect on a regular basis, I'm talking weekly, as to what's important for you, like you had mentioned, Ozan, what's important for you today, what's important for you with your relationship, but also too, occasionally, whether it's once a week, once a month, check and see, okay, am I still headed toward my long-term goal, passion, or purpose? Because many times we do focus on the day to day and get things done, which is great. But sometimes you might be slightly shifting off course, shifting off course. And so, since I'm a, a pilot and I don't fly commercially, I just fly privately. But because of that, I relate that to both the GPS and course corrections. So many times, if you just were to not have a GPS, which is I think how many people are running around, they don't have an end purpose or a goal what they're trying to reach long term, 3 years to 20 years down the road, not long term, 2 months from now, but 3 to 20 years down the road. If you look at where you're going, what's important to you, then you can start to prioritize putting energy, time, investment, or whatever that looks like into those things that are purposeful. So it's so important to really, once again, reconnect on a regular basis, take time out. So one simple thing, just like I was alluding to myself, is that when I go home, I literally put my phone on the counter. I am not near it. So either I'm watching YouTube or Netflix, or I'm hanging out with my family. And if my kids come into the room, because I don't have that phone distraction, it's just a few less things I have to think about, that all of a sudden I can stop if I'm watching something, or and my kids come through the house, because all my three kids live with me, but
Mm.
I would never know it because they're never there, or they're busy working or going to school or whatever they're doing. But when they come through, I try to be intentional for even that few moments and say, "Hey, how's it going? What's going on today? What's going on?" And just like last night, I was able to cook dinner, and really my son cooked dinner, but I was there to support and help clean up around him. But he was cooking dinner for us because I got home a little bit later. But it was cool to spend that time with him in the kitchen, not on my phone, but just chatting, seeing what's going on. Because and then my second son also then came home, and we were able to hang out for a good hour, all three of us, just chilling out, hanging. And my wife and my daughter are in Florida, basically on spring break. So this is my time to try to reconnect with them. In this case, I had a conversation with them. It's like, hey, when are you guys both going to be home where all three of us can eat dinner? Well, that's not going to happen this week because they're all doing different things. They're working. But at least as I can, and I have that time with each of my sons in this case, I'm trying to be intentional, even if it's just for a few moments. It may not be the hours that I want, but if I can get that high quality engagement with them while I'm there and I'm intentional and I'm aware of it, it's amazing. So, really looking at self care, disconnecting from a lot of these devices, disconnecting from people at times, and just even just closing your eyes. No, sometimes no music. Some people need to have music all the time, like if they're walking, running, got to have that music going. I would recommend just not having anything. Sometimes I drive to work just when I have a lot going on in my mind. I just realize I'm unsettled mentally, and I'll just have the radio, music, my podcasts, business audios. I'll have all that turned off. And as I'm driving to work, since I drive to work, some people are working remotely in their homes. So they have to pick and choose the time if they choose to do this. But I'll drive quietly and just let my mind get settled. I think that's another huge piece that if you look back 30 years ago, we pretty much went to work or school, had that environment, and then we came home, and then we had that environment. So let's say three things to deal with. Very simple. So you had some decompression time. You had some time to settle and maybe construct what happened in your mind throughout the day and the different ideas and things that happen. Nowadays, if you fast forward to today, now we have a constant access to hundreds of people, thousands of messaging, thousands of interactions or distractions, and now we never get settled, we never go deep to resolve a lot of the ideas in our head, to really have some deep learning experiences, deep
Mhm.
understandings, and everything. So I think that one of the biggest things is you have to, once again, take time away,
Mhm.
get a break from all the stuff that's going on.
Wow, I love the point where you mentioned that, this intention around the things you do, creating the space for the things that you intend to do and to be present. And also that leadership is not always about this go, go, to go mode, like we always have to
Yeah.
be efficient. And I think it's the hardest lesson for like, even like for me as well, sometimes to understand and actually to do, just like to do nothing. And it's hard because we always want to do something. Like I feel it's almost illegal to do nothing. But then when I do take the rest, I find myself like, okay, it was actually great because of this inner reflection. My health is doing better. And I also realized this device, like having a phone just on when I'm talking, for example, with my boyfriends and we're having dinner and I'm still like messaging someone like text, while I'm speaking to him. And then he said, "Can I have your attention?" And I'm like, I'm not mean to be like rude to him, but I would like, hey, I'm just still caught up with some things. But then I do realize, like, even on family dinners, if the phone is on the table, it does make a difference. It shows everyone that you're there, but not there in a sense, like, and I think that or doing these little things helps a lot. And also, I realized in this whole work life integrations, it's so important to know what the expectations are. I had a recent talk with my boyfriend on this, where, and there were moments where I was upset because I expected something different. For example, I want to spend certain weekends then together, and
Mhm.
then he was busy, or things changed like last minute. And I'm like, why don't you communicate that? Or
Right.
where are the boundaries? I need a lot of personal time as well. So that's why I really feel going through like what is your need, your want, your expectations, how do you define the things, and then coming to a plan where you mentioned like monthly talk together or a weekly short briefing on that together, or even this week's going to be a lot, or I'm launching this product and saying like that's why let's go like for little walks in between. Like all these little things matter so much, and I think that a lot of the great relationships in client business, in romantic life, it comes from a lot of this discomfort moment where I wouldn't call it confrontation, but it is called like in a way like addressing those things and then being able to maintain those boundaries. And yeah, and I would like love to hear what are some of the boundaries that you've changed over the past years that have helped you to have a better quality of life, perhaps in business, at workplace, or even with
Mhm.
your wife, kids? Could you tell us some of the boundary shifts that you did and how you maintain them?
Sure. Yeah, for me, like I said, I look as I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was a workaholic. I was driven by the dollar. I'm like, I gotta make money, and I gotta serve my clients. But then come to find out there wasn't really that much of a need for me to be staying at work, more than 8 hours. I'd stay at work from 8 to 9.5 hours. And then
Mm,
in my case, since I travel, it's a good half hour in, a good half hour back. So now that's 10 plus hours. And that's not going to be very good quality for my family. And there's less time to have those are quality experiences. So some of the boundaries are just realizing that, okay, I need to create a better time frame and shut off work. And I think a lot of people have had that issue now that a lot of people are working remote in many cases or a hybrid situation.
mm,
But when do I shut off that time frame or put ends to working? I'm going to begin here. I'm going to begin or end at a certain time. And that may not happen every day, but as long as you're intentional about it, you can at least probably accomplish it most of the time because you still need to be flexible. Things happen. But having that boundary there also helps you to create the boundary at home to say, okay, when
mm,
I'm at home, I'm going to be present. And like you said, with having your device on you and just answering a text and
mm,
maybe not being as present, I've done that same thing in the past. And once in a while, I get caught on that if I do have my phone at night for some reason or for a random thing, and then I get stuck on it, scrolling and texting and doing all kinds of things. And I'm like, why was I even on my phone in the first place? What was the main reason? Unless just to keep myself busy.
mm,
So I think just being intentional and aware and reflecting on and this could be a daily reflection. How my day went yesterday, did that really hit my values and the things that are important to me? That I put intention toward them? No, the day didn't go like I thought it would go 100%,
mm,
but I can say on one or two things I was intentional. Like for instance, one of the things I've developed, especially in the last 2 months, I've always had a challenge with reading, doing my reading the Bible, doing a daily devotion, exercising, and really it was just all making excuses. But
mm,
I was still distracted and had old habits that I was trying to fight. But then I learned and developed some new habits. So I have an excellent morning routine that I've been consistent with over the last 2 plus months now, I think,
mm,
of exercising, drinking water, because that's another thing I forget to do all day is to drink water since I drink coffee, reading my Bible, doing a devotion and praying, and also reading out of some other books. And one of the coolest things I experienced a good month ago was that I finished a book that I've been trying to read for the last 2 years. And the only problem is I never started the book. I never started it. But then I developed some habits like, oh, I'm just going to open up that book every stinking day and I'm going to at least read a paragraph or a page minimum. And if that takes me a couple minutes or if I have more time and feel it, then I might read even more, maybe read up to a chapter, whatever. Doesn't matter. But by doing that on a regular basis and creating that time and space, those boundaries in the morning to say, for in the morning, instead of rushing off to work at 6 a.m.,
Mm.
I'm gonna stay at home and spend anywhere from 15 minutes on my morning routine or 45 minutes on my morning routine taking care of myself. So in some ways, you have to consider yourself first, similar to when you're on an airline. And if they say, man, if we lose cabin pressure, make sure you put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Because if you don't and you're trying to help everybody else, you're going to pass out because you're not going to be able to breathe. So you have to take care of yourself to some degree, but that's just a portion of what our life looks like, just a portion of it. And then you can be more optimized, have more space, more energy for
Mm.
other people and the things that are important to you.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. And I think it's great that you create those conscious space and you shifted those boundaries as well. And another thing, it's a workplace and for a lot of the busy entrepreneurs, I feel that this talk around, as we talked before, guilt, the pressure, and then some
Mm.
people, they are scared to communicate certain things. So it goes into people pleasing, like I'm going to please everyone around. And then it's like, what can I do more? Like, and it's always about like, what can you do less? What can you delegate more? Where can you ask for more help? Where can your boundaries be more strict on certain things and hold that? And I feel a lot of the people, they sometimes lack the courage to maintain that as well. And apart like from that, like let's say for people who are in corporate executives, I mean their job or Monday till Friday, they have their office time and they come home and let's say they're not fulfilled, they're just doing the minimum, bare minimum, they don't feel like they're enjoying life. What is the perspective that you would share to them to, like to come back to their purpose or reconnect to that part? And also like for people who have a hard time setting those boundaries, what's the perspective you would share to them?
Yeah, I would say get everybody involved with it.
Hmm.
Number one, you have to be the leader in deciding what's most important. So most everything, if you're the leader of your family, so to speak, or the leader of an organization or anywhere in an organization, you need to set some boundaries and you do that mainly through communication. Everybody has different wants and needs, and those will change and be flexible depending on what's going on. But communicating and having conversations with other people, I think is one of the best ways for everybody both to connect is what it is, because it's not you against me, it's we're in the same boat and we're trying to do the same things, even though we have our own separate lives, but we're still trying to accomplish the same goal. So having those conversations and getting a better understanding of what's in people's minds and what they're going through, it's going to humanize people instead of you're not doing what I thought you're supposed to be doing. And that can happen from a leader or somebody who's in a management position and they have employees that are working for them, or it could be an employee talking to their manager or their boss or CEO. And so it's important to really communicate, doesn't matter where you are, and to connect with people because everybody's going through something.
Mm.
Everybody has challenges, and sometimes we're just not at our best at what we're doing. And I don't know if I answered that question or if you could clarify that again. I think I went off, but
No, no, I think it's great. One of the things that just also struck my mind was this whole thing about when you grow in your career. I also feel the more successful you are, there will be more opportunities presented. And I always say
mm,
only because you can doesn't mean that you should. And this is the part where I feel our filter needs to grow more as we go. As well. So in order that to keep those boundaries and we maintain on what you mentioned before earlier on our long-term, short-term goals as well, and to say no to that. And as we go, like what also something that I'm also curious about is, pivoting through different stages in life, because there might be a time where you're ready, for example, to take on more clients. At least that was in my case at the beginning.
yeah,
I was like, more clients, one-on-one clients. And I stretched my capacity to that level energetically and to that level to show up for, on that level. And then as I go, I was like, okay, let's do more group format or let's tighten the capacity here so I have more time to travel during this season of time. And then there is another season. So I feel like a lot of the things in life is like pivoting, adapting. And then there are people, as a professional, they transition into different jobs, workplaces, other go from 9 to 5 to full-time entrepreneur. Could you tell us like what was for you a big like pivoting moment in your career, and how did you shift through those changes and the different challenges that came with those things as well?
That's a great question because I did not shift and pivot earlier on in my career. I was like a bulldog and I grabbed on like this is the way things have to be. So just in the last, I would say 5 years of being around different types of people, people
Mhm,
more successful than me, or being in masterminds or accountability groups, that's
mhm,
helped to both expand my vision of who I could be and the things I've learned. And that's actually just as you were talking, just thinking about what are some ways we can change our behaviors, our motivation, our vision, expand our minds. And one of the best ways is your environment, the people we hang around. And I've heard it said that your income and your lifestyle is the average of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. It's right there somewhere in the average. And I've heard a few people say, man, yeah, if I really think about it, yep, that's where my income is and that's where my mindset is. But if you're hanging around people who pull you up instead of keep you where you are or pull you down, those people are going to lift you up to new ideas. And that's also the reason why I'm even here today, because to do something like this even a year ago, 12 months ago, was not in my mindset, because I was not doing videos. I wasn't really doing. I've done a couple of conferences and talks and keynote speaking engagements, but for the most part, that wasn't in my DNA or comfortability.
mhm,
Now I can say a year later, just because my mindset has expanded, the people I hang around is a huge influence on how I behave. So it's so important. And many times we get tired or lazy in my case, and you're just like, I just want to relax. I just want to relax. And there are times for that. But if you're generally hanging around the right people and you're being built up, that's going to be a huge impact on what you're doing. And then also too, you had mentioned earlier, and tell me if I'm going off to it in just a second, but you'd mentioned too, staying connected to your purpose and passion, 3 year long-term goals, 3 years to 20 years, whatever. And like you were saying earlier, that we many times forget or get lost
mhm,
and we're forgetting where we're going. So if you do have a career pivot or change, and what I've learned is that you have to once again reconnect with that long-term goal. Is this, like you said, taking me in the direction I want to go, or do I need to say no to this opportunity because it's taking me away or it's taking more of my time and energy? And once again, we only have so much time and energy for the few things that we want to accomplish to put 80% of our time and energy on those 20%. But we only have so much that we can do, and the rest of the 80% of things that aren't as high of an impact, we're going to have to put those on the back burner. But you can still have an amazing life just focusing on those top 20% of things. But you really have to be connected with what's going on, be flexible. And you had mentioned earlier too that sometimes you might have guilt in some of the things you have done, some of the things you haven't done. But if you're really prioritizing and you're clear on your purpose and you have clarity on your vision, it helps so much to make decisions because you don't have to fuss and fume or think about it. You immediately know, wow, based upon where I'm going and my people in my life, my relationships,
mhm,
this makes sense. So having those shifts, you got to have an open, I think, abundant mindset, and
mhm,
also reframe some of these new opportunities. Because for me, it was just a scary situation. Ooh, I want to do what I'm doing because I know how to do it. I don't want to do something new because I might fail. I might fail. And I had that poor mindset a long time ago and for a long time of scarcity and fear of failure. And I've had to change that through reading, listen to audios and podcasts, being around the right kinds of people to expand my mindset to abundance and realize there is unlimited abundance. Each and every person, I feel, because of my Christian background and faith, that
mhm,
we're created in the image of God, and therefore we have likenesses like God, which are creators. We
mhm,
create every single day. And I'll just to say a little bit stronger, we create every stinking day, but many times we just fall back to default and let the day kind of happen to us. So we need to be a little more proactive and realize we do have control. We have just been given it away because we've been too distracted.
Yes. Wow, you touch on so many points. I think one of the things to go back where you
Yep.
mentioned about we're the average of five people, I think this is so true. And the way I applied it in my life is like I reflect on, the past, let's say the 3 months, who are the people I was most in touch with and spend time together, whether it was offline and online. And then I ask myself, how do they affect me financially, emotionally, spiritually, energetically? And a lot of the time, sometimes it's like stricter boundaries, especially for people who, if it's your own family members, it's like hard. There was a season where it was tougher to have conversations with my mom because of different beliefs around business. And, it's always tricky to eliminate your family members out of the game. But I felt like there was just like the boundary of like, hey, let's not talk about this specific topic. I know me and you will just have different opinions around that. And then, I went go all in, created your own success. So I came with evidence back. Hey, look, mom, like it's not as you thought, but it's not to prove, but it's just like being intentional for our own peace as well and high performance. And another point you mentioned is, I think in all of this stuff, I think a lot of the people, and especially like great entrepreneurs, they have this ability to think really great forward. They know what they want in the future. And at the same time, I think it's such an art to stay present and to not be too much conditional in a sense of like, I'm going to be happy when I made my million. I'm going to be happy when I get married. And they realize, oh, even after marriage, the shit goes on and things didn't change. So it's like, oh, it just started right now. And I always have like this moment. I came up with a term in French. It's called le regard. It means the moment. And sometimes, as corny it sounds, like it was like a moment when I stared once my boyfriend, and I felt this deep connection of love and this presence in the moment. And I really realized, even on those days where I was not making money and I was in debt and hustling, and I went out for walks, sometimes in deep frustrations, but I do remember the good mornings, sipping my coffee, just having the time of my life with my boyfriend, even if it means like going on a picnic and not having too much money to go out. Like even now, making the money I want and being able to travel, I realized the happiness moments that I had back then, they never changed, even after I made the money. The good news is we do have more options now, but all this happiness fooling around, being present, like it was always there. So I really think that happiness is a choice. Money helps, but not like to be non-circumstantially in our power, non-circumstantially in leading ourselves, in not making it worse, our words attached to the numbers and the metrics, but understanding still the desires and honing into that with courage. I think this is one element. And then from the other things that you mentioned, I think it's so important just to have clarity on what we desire, and then from there, like obviously take action and not give in to that type of fear. And I feel a lot of people, they don't get the results they want because they put something out there, they manifest, pray, but they don't take the action. And I think that a lot of the people also they're like paralyzed in terms of they cannot decide. It's like almost
Mm,
foot in, one foot out. Let's see. Let me pray to God. And as a Christian, I do that as well. Like, let's have a conversation with God. But then I'm like, oh, was that God, or is that my intuition, or is that my trauma? Like, what am I speaking to? And I also
mm,
realized in life sometimes it's really about, while there are logical decisions I've made because of my future goals, there were many moments, as you mentioned, like have an open mind, because our intuition knows certain things that is not logical. And these are the things that create sometimes massive wonders, massive money, massive moves. And I would love to ask you, how do you integrate your spirituality, the part
mhm.
with God and prayers, and your intuition into business? Because both are important to be in this masculine of having the metrics, KPIs, this is my goal, I stick to that, but having an element of, I'm in this feminine, there's this energy of like, I let myself, go and flow with that, my intuition. How do you integrate both of that in your business?
Yeah, and just real quickly, if I can say that, in the past, it wasn't until just this last 12 months, basically, that I've even shared my faith when it comes to business. I've tried to keep that separate from business, like, ooh, I don't want to lose business. I don't want to turn people off. But I found I was fighting something that's part of my DNA of being a Christian and being saved by Jesus. And so, starting with that, over the last 12 months, I've changed that and said, I'm going to be authentic to who I am and what my values are. And with that, just in the last 12 months, I haven't had as much success. I think any entrepreneur can say this, but as much success as I've wanted, that I've
Mm,
set goals for. But my fulfillment, my joy, my peace, and knowing that I'm following what God wants is my purpose. And to have a bigger impact on this world rather than just me get stuff. I can get a bunch of stuff.
mhm,
And I've connected with that deeply, and it's been awesome. Everybody I've connected with in the meantime, and just being authentic and opening up, they've then reflected that back on me. So, with that being said, when it comes to spirituality or religion or my purpose and all of that, I know for me that once again, I'm created by God and saved through Jesus. Because of that, that's where everything comes from. Everything is created by God. And if you read some Bible passages, even where Jesus was walking around and one woman was ill, and just by touching his cloak, she was healed immediately. And he could sense that she touched his cloak and she was healed. Well, he turned to her and said, pretty much, wow. He said, you are healed because your faith made it so. Your belief was so strong. So once again, it wasn't money, it wasn't this or that, but because of your belief, which comes from God, and your faith in this awesome, powerful spirit that we know, you can do so many different things. And there's, our mindset, which, like I said, I've had a scarcity mindset, a limited fear mindset. But by changing all this and trusting in God, looking in the right direction, for me, reading the Bible, doing devotions, being around other Christians who can uplift me in that way, that I realized, wow, we do have challenges, but the one promise that God says in the Bible is like, I will, at this point, your salvation is taken care of. We've Jesus has conquered sin, death, and the devil. So there's nothing pretty much that can't be accomplished if you imagine it. And everything we see around us, everything. Once God created the world, there was only woods, trees, water, and land and animals. There was nothing else. So phones, computers, buildings, cars, roads, all created by us just by our imagination. Mobile devices, all the technology, AI, everything was created only by our imagination.
mhm,
So we are more powerful and are only using, have people have said, only like 1% or less of our brains than what we could do. So really tapping into where I come from, my identity, which is from God, and through Jesus Christ I've been saved. I now have so much power and passion that it's also said in the Bible, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it, but if I go to accomplish anything that's in God's purpose and God's will, who can go against me? Who can go against it? Because if God's will says it's going to be done and He's going to make it happen, and I'm tied in with what God wants, there's nothing that can stop that. I might learn along the way. I might go in a different direction, which I have, and I've changed my purpose and my passion throughout time, and I'm so glad I tapped into it.
mhm,
Um, so those are some of the ways to do it, and then just some quick ways that have helped me out is once again prayer,
mhm,
devotion, putting my phone away, along with meditating, just sitting and doing nothing. You don't have to think about anything in specifically, or you can think about something specifically, a challenge you're trying to overcome. But sometimes just sitting there can be an amazing thing to reconnect. You can also journal. Just get a journal and journal out each day. What wins did you have? What learnings did you have? Not failures, but reframe that to learnings. And also, too, what stories are you telling yourself? Get connected with. There's a story that's happening out here, and there's also stories that are happening in our own mind and what you tell yourself. So those are some of the ways that I think just by being honest and authentic and really taking the time to do some of that difficult work and reconnect to my purpose and what's most important. And like I said, for me, That's focusing on what God's will is for my life, because my will for my life is probably so small, minuscule, but what God wants for me, pretty awesome.
Wow, I love this. Well, thank you so much for your honesty and this
Yep.
transparency. I think that's really powerful, and that's why we have those lives, all this rawness that comes out. And for all the audience, if that resonated with you, drop a comment purpose. This is so key. We just talked about surrendering to our given calling. And I also feel, at least in my perspective, that we talk a lot about find your purpose. But I think, according also to Corey, we might resonate with that. That I think that our purpose has been given through God. There's a common purpose that we all have, and I think that it's more awakening into the calling that you've been allocated, and it's impossible to compare that. Like logically, of course, we tend to sometimes compare automatically as a human, but I think there's a difference in like knowing because your purpose is just so different, it cannot be compared with somebody else. And that's why when people and entrepreneurs say, hey, I do this. If I can do it, so can you. And I think there is something really positive in that. But at the same time, I also disagree because I think that, for example, someone who is always in front of the camera or is an actress or is on stage, it doesn't mean that the other person will also be always at the front end. Some of the people have a different purpose, and it's not because they're worse. It's like we both need the different roles. Or maybe someone is behind the camera. Maybe they have a whole different purpose. Some people, they go into church ministry, they feel this calling from Jesus. And one of the things in terms of faith that I've also realized is because I'm so much multi passionate, I felt like I was pulled in so many different directions, and I was confused of what should I now do? Like I have this business element I want to make for money. I have my Bible Kingdom that I've like started like this year in terms of educating people about Bible studies and things. I have my mental health community and the women leadership community based on my background of rape and kidnap. And everything does feel right. But I used to separate them all. And one person once told me, what if all of them is tied in into a common purpose? And this is where I realized that my repression of like, oh, I cannot say this, like I cannot say this religion part, I cannot like be too much and come across like all over the place, so let's not mention that. And I kind of felt it's really about be intentional. And I've learned like, okay, I can be an entrepreneur, that's my main focus as a coach in leadership and business coaching. But I know that the face part, whether you want it or not, like there will always be elements in my life integrated and embodied. So that's like just a part of it. And then the mental health or the women leaders part, like it's all infused into my common purpose of empowering healings and helping people to turn to Jesus, to come to salvation. And I might not say that, but I think that we're almost like artists, and I sometimes see myself like as a prophet, as a visionary. And it's just like, for me it's just funny because when I go on LinkedIn, I just see people have like 10 different thousand titles, you know, mom, dad, entrepreneur, whatnot, pastor, minister, you know, motivator for my boyfriend, vice versa. So I just like think at the end we cannot be summarized. It's really coming down, like shake off all these labels that were put on you, all the shoulds, and then getting, you know, into prayers. And even if something feels like not right and you're pulled in many directions, I think it's really the trust, because the answer is there already. We know it. That's the first voice. But I just found that the second voice is often the fear. We talk ourselves again out, and that's what the second voice does sometimes. So yeah, I think that is the part. I think we have a really great, deep conversation here, me and Corey. If that resonated, don't forget to follow us, Corey, for more leadership insights, how to restore your passion, your purpose as well. Follow me also for certain leadership insights. I work with a lot of executives, business owners, not just scaling in money, but reconnecting back and living a mind blowing life, because this is why we initially started. So you can have both. You can have the family, a thriving relationship, a thriving business. And this is like your self worthiness, like understanding that you deserve that and that God provides where He leads. And that part, yeah, I think it's just important to understand. Kari, the last thing for you, how can people best connect with you, and what is the best way that people can work with you?
Yeah, the best way to connect would be through LinkedIn. Just connect with me on LinkedIn or message me. Love to have a chat with you
Mm.
if you resonated with any of this, and see where you're headed, what type of challenges you may be going through, or what successes you're having. That's an awesome thing. And the way people can work with me is basically through those conversations. We can talk and chat, and either I can work on with some coaching sessions, or we can work if you have goals you're trying to achieve, or certain types of quality of life and business that you're trying to work, and to be able to have both of those. That's something I'm really passionate about, and then I'm also pursuing it in the process too. So I'm excited for that kind of thing. And if you want to talk about your faith life too, like I said, I'm willing to pray with you if you've got anything going on. I'm willing to pray for you. We don't have to be in business together, but I'd be willing to pray for you because abundance is amazing when you really experience it and truly believe it. So thank you, Ozan. And this has been great. This has been great.
Amazing. Well, it was an amazing talk. Thank you so much for joining. And as lastly, I kind of feel this calling. Let's end this with a prayer.
Yeah,
Well,
awesome.
dear God, thank you so much for bringing me and Kari together today for this amazing talk. And also for all the listeners catching the replay, being live with us. Bless us all with health, abundance, amazing family, and the surrendering towards our calling. Help us to connect with the right people, with the right opportunities, and repel us off of the wrong people and things that don't serve us. Help us to come daily into salvation and have this inner peace in us, no matter what we go through. No matter if you're sick, no matter if your finances are not there, when Jesus calls you, um, please help us to surrender to you, to live through you, to become a better husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, even when you're single, to live through these standards that God has given you, and that you know that you're loved, and may your life be full of many blessings ahead. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Again, follow us, don't forget, and let us know in the comments of the replay of what was your biggest key takeaway, and most importantly, what you're going to implement as well. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
Kari.
Thank you.